Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and demystify something that literally sits at the heart of your business's survival: strategic demand forecasting. I know, forecasting can kind of sound like we're trying to read tea leaves or gaze into a crystal ball, but today we're going to prove it's the exact opposite. It is a highly logical, structured process, and frankly, it's absolutely essential if you want your business to thrive.
So what are we actually talking about here? Let's keep the definition simple. At its core, forecasting is just the data-driven process of predicting your future customer demand. You're basically estimating exactly what your customers are going to buy down the line. And you figure that out by blending historical data, current market trends, and your own business insights. The whole point? Optimizing your supply chain so you're ready for what's next, rather than constantly playing catch-up.
Because look, without forecasting, companies usually stumble into one of two absolute nightmare scenarios. On the left side, you're drowning in too much inventory. That means tying up massive amounts of capital, wasting money on excess stock, and running totally out of warehouse space. Just imagine paying rent for pallets of stuff nobody is buying. On the flip side, you run completely dry. You get severe stockouts, cascading production delays, and worst of all, frustrated customers who just bounce to your competitor and might never come back.
To help you avoid those traps, here's the roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll hit the core of forecasting. Second, types and demand components. Third, common forecasting methods. Then, accuracy and external factors, followed by the forecasting process itself, and finally, forecasting versus demand planning.
All right, Section 1, the core of forecasting.
Section 2, types and demand components.
To actually unlock those big benefits, like slashing supply chain costs and boosting customer service, we first need to look at the two main ways we measure demand. We've got qualitative and quantitative. Qualitative forecasting is your go-to when you just don't have historical data. Think of a brand new product launch, like some crazy new wearable tech. You can't look at past sales, so you rely on expert opinions, surveys, and deep market research. On the flip side, quantitative forecasting is for your existing, stable products. It relies on hard historical data and math models to confidently project the future.
Now, that demand usually breaks down into four distinct components. First, there's the trend, which is a long-term, predictable shift, kind of like the steady year-over-year boom in electric vehicles. Second is seasonality. These are those repeating predictable patterns. Think ice cream sales spiking every summer, right? Third, we have cyclicality, which is tied to bigger macroeconomic cycles, like housing demand tanking during a recession. And finally, random variation, the total wildcards. We're talking floods, global pandemics, or even a sudden viral TikTok trend that no algorithm could have predicted.
Moving right along to Section 3, common forecasting methods. Let's kick things off with the absolute simplest method, the naive forecast. You can think of this as the copy-paste function of the forecasting world. The math is incredibly basic. It literally just assumes that next month's demand will be exactly the same as this month's. Sold 50 units in May? Great. The naive forecast says you are going to sell 50 in June. Now, I know that sounds way too simple, but it's actually a super useful baseline. If your super expensive complex software can't beat the naive forecast, well, you've got a problem.
Next up, we have the moving average method. Say you had demand of 100 units in January, 120 in February, and 110 in March. You just average them out. 100 plus 120 plus 110, divide that by 3, and boom, you've got a smooth forecast of 110 units for April. It basically takes the demand over a set few months and nicely levels it out, totally absorbing any weird minor hiccups in the data.
But what happens when demand changes on a dime? Consumer habits shift fast, and old data can go stale really quickly. That is where methods like the weighted moving average and exponential smoothing come to the rescue. Instead of treating all your past months exactly the same, these models actually give way more importance, or weight, to your most recent data. Exponential smoothing is particularly awesome at this. It looks at past data, but heavily favors the newest shifts. If a product suddenly goes viral, exponential smoothing adapts super fast, making it the mathematical engine behind most advanced supply chain software today.
All right, Section 4, accuracy and external factors.
Okay, here's the hard truth we all just have to accept. Forecasts are never, ever perfect. They're an estimate. Our real objective is strictly to minimize that forecast error as much as humanly possible. You'll hear planners throw around acronyms like MAD, which is mean absolute deviation, or MAPI for mean absolute percentage error, and RMSE for root mean squared error. They also track something called bias, which basically just tells you if you're consistently over-forecasting or under-forecasting month after month. The golden rule here: a lower error mathematically equals a much stronger, more reliable forecast.
But listen, all the math in the world still has to deal with the messy reality of the actual world. External factors, or disruptors, can completely wreck your accuracy in a heartbeat. We're talking about sudden internal choices like massive marketing promotions or price drops, or totally wild external factors, unexpected festivals, a competitor slashing prices overnight, bizarre weather, shifting global economies, or a sudden supply disruption at a major port. These chaotic real-world variables are exactly what make forecasting such a thrilling, ongoing challenge.
Which brings us to Section 5, the forecasting process.
So how do professionals actually tame all that chaos? Here is the streamlined 6-step process. First, you collect your historical sales data, and critically, you clean it. Garbage in, garbage out, right? You absolutely cannot base decisions on bad info. Second, you identify your patterns. Third, you choose your method, like that moving average we talked about, and generate the forecast. Fourth, you don't just blindly trust the math. You review it cross-functionally with sales, marketing, and ops. Fifth, you finalize your demand plan. And sixth, you relentlessly monitor your accuracy to improve for the very next cycle.
And our final section, Section 6, Forecasting versus Demand Planning.
Now, this is the distinction that trips up a lot of businesses, separating the statistical prediction from the actual business strategy. Forecasting is mostly statistical. It predicts future demand, it's usually owned by specialized planners or data analysts, and its entire focus is firmly on the numbers. Demand planning, on the other hand, is a much bigger picture. It takes that pure statistical data and combines it with real-world business inputs to create an actionable plan. It's a highly cross-functional process, and its focus is 100% on making strategic business decisions.
Honestly, if you want to summarize the difference as cleanly as possible, think of it like this. Forecasting tells you what is likely to happen. It gives you the what. Demand planning, though, decides what the business should actually do about it. It gives you the so what. You absolutely need both of these working in perfect harmony if you want to succeed.
Before we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with some rapid-fire beginner tips so you can start building a more resilient supply chain right now. Always start with clean data. Protect your inputs at all costs. Really understand your unique demand patterns inside and out before you ever pick a math model. Don't just rely on one method. Compare multiple methods to see what actually fits best. Track your accuracy every single month. No excuses. And finally, break out of your silo. Collaborate heavily with sales, marketing, and finance.
I want you to reflect on your own operations for a second. Ask yourself, are you trying to predict perfectly, or are you trying to make better business decisions? Because a good forecast isn't about predicting the future perfectly. A flawless prediction doesn't exist. The real goal here is to act with the absolute best available information you have so you can build genuine business resilience. A forecast is a decision support tool, not a guarantee. Once you view it through that lens, it stops being this mystical promise that you stress over getting exactly right, and it starts being a powerful, strategic guide. The stronger your forecasting process becomes, the more cost-effective and resilient your entire supply chain will be. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I'll leave you with this final thought. What is one piece of data you can look at differently tomorrow to move your business from simply guessing to finally knowing?